Good morning, Austin.
Hey, Dad, how are you?
I'm doing well. These Saturday mornings, I don't know about you, but I look forward to them.
Yes, me too.
Getting into the stories of friends of ours and even some people we don't know. But today's going to be special because it's a first. Today, we're going to journey inside the heart and mind and relationship of Team Ferguson, our first husband and wife team. This is a story about the heart of a transformational coach, the commitment of a coach's wife, and the resiliency of a coach's kids as they walk through the highs and lows of a coaching career. My name is Ken Karcher, and alongside me is my son, Austin Karcher, and would like to welcome Team Ferguson as our guest to Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Brian and Mary Beth.
Ken, thank you for having us. Super excited to be able to talk to you. This is great. I've listened to many of my mentors ahead, with Coach Dungy, Mike Jones, former players, Darnell Deacons. And so to have the opportunity to be on your podcast, this is awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. We're excited.
Well, we're glad to have both of you and excited for what the Spirit will bring out of our stories together. We have a lot of similarities in some case, just being coaches and things our families have been through and moments that sometimes are, like we said, high moments and sometimes that there's messy moments. But I think what's important is let's go back to both of your youths and growing up in the homes. Tell us what you'd like about, and however you want to do it, Brian first or Mary Beth, that's your call. But tell us a little bit about your family, parents. Did you have brothers and sisters? What was it like growing up in your home?
I guess I'll go first. So my childhood, I think, if you had to say a word for me, it was focused, um, really focused in what I was trying to accomplish in life. I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and which that means I was a big Denver Broncos fan, right?
There we go.
And early on, I loved the game of football, and one of the things though, I had a major learning disability once I got into school, and I really struggled reading and writing and just understanding school. And my mother, she tried to help me. They ended up putting me in a K through 12 school. It was a Christian K through 12 school. It was about 20 minutes away from my house. It was called Hilltop Baptist, and it was a Christian K through 12 school. So they put me in this Christian K through 12 school because they had a special education department. It was called talent development, and they felt that it was going to be able to help me with my disability, and it really was the worst thing for me. What it was I was stuck in the room with kids from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I was, at the time I was in third grade, and they gave you little cubbies, and you worked at your own pace, and you basically taught yourself. And there was people with all kinds of different disabilities, from girls in wheelchairs to reading disabilities, hit all spectrums. And so I really struggled in school. And so, I'm stuck into this room in this private school away from really my neighborhood. And so, it really made me a quiet person. I kept to myself a lot. Um, but the one thing with my major, my reading and writing, my disability was other senses. God gave me other senses, and I had the ability to have I still do, is a photographic memory, and so I could
Wow.
see things and remember things. And as I progressed through my life, I could see things, remember things, rewind them in my brain, fast forward it, rewind, fast forward, and so that's kind of how my brain was working. But I was, I struggled in school, and which made me, like I said, a quiet person. But then I would go home And when I got home, I loved the game of football, and so I would go outside and I would play football, and most of the times it was by myself, because I didn't grow up around the kids in the neighborhood. My school was 20 minutes away, and I'd go out in the backyard and I would, or into the park, and I'd play football, and I'd grab my football, and I'd be John Elway in the backyard, and I'd take my 7-step drop and I'd throw the football, and then I'd run and try to catch it myself, and I would be, you know, the three amigos. I'd be Vance Johnson, Ricky Natil, going and catching the football, or I'd throw a short pass, and I'd be Clarence Kay or Orson Mobley catching the ball. I'd throw the ball and make myself hit into the fence, and I would act like, Steve Atwater or Mike Harden just hit me. And so that was my childhood. My childhood was, I was focused and determined because I love the game of football. And so with that learning disability that I had, I was really drawn to the game. And so everything that I did with football was try to get as much knowledge as I could in the game. And so I would collect football cards, and I would, I was a very visual person. So I would look at the football cards. I would study the pictures of the football cards. I would always have football on TV, and I would watch the plays. I would rewind the plays in my brain. I'd go in, and I had a spiral notebook, and I would draw out the plays that I just saw. I'd run out in the backyard, and I'd throw it. We'd run a toss sweep, and I'd be Sammy Winder, and run the football and be Sammy Winder. And so, that was me growing up. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. I had 3 sisters. Yeah, 3 sisters.
Yes.
3 sisters. My mother and father, my hurt people, right? And so it was, growing up, hurt people, and that's what my father was. He was a hurt person, and so he turned around and he hurt people. So.
Mm. Brian, the only thing I think you missed there, did you ever practice in your backyard sitting on the bench being Ken Karcher? Because I was with those guys as well.
No, every once in a while when John Elway got hurt, I'd go in and I'd be Gary Kubiak.
There we go.
Never made it to Ken Karcher.
You didn't make it to the third team guy. Okay, well, thanks a lot. Mary Beth, what about you? Tell us about your grown-up years.
So I was married. My parents were married up until middle school. Then they ended up getting divorced. But I was an Air Force brat. We moved all over the place because of my dad. We lived in Florida. We spent a lot of time in Louisiana. Ended up in Virginia for about a year, and then I ended up in middle school, high school in Colorado. So I'm the oldest of 2 younger siblings. I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and we were really close as a family. My brother and sister, we were really close, and I would say adventurous would be the way to describe our household. We did all sorts of things together. We would go on hikes and go fishing, and we would spend tons of time in Wyoming visiting my grandparents on my mother's side of the family. And my best memories are just being in Wyoming, looking for petrified wood with my grandfather. He would take us on his Bronco, and we would go fishing. He would, make us all the trout for dinner that he would catch. And we would spend time in the caves behind his home. It was a great time. Lots of adventures were spent during that time. My parents were not close. They fought and they argued, which entailed their divorce, later on in life. But the time that I spent with my grandparents and with my siblings at that time was very special, and things that I hold on to dearly. We went to church every once in a while, a Methodist church. I might have been sprinkled when I was a baby. Sprinkling, of course, absolutely nothing to my salvation later in life. But we spent, we would go to church on special occasions, Easter, Christmas time, and I would dress up like the lamb in the play. But I didn't know what any of those things meant, just that seasonal. We would go to church seasonally. And that was about the extent, of that part of my time as a kid kind of growing up.
Did you have a favorite place that you lived?
Some of my best memories come from Louisiana. We spent a lot of time in Louisiana, about 3 years living there. It was second through fifth grade is when we lived in Louisiana, and it was one of those neighborhoods that we would go from house to house to house, and we would jump on people's trampolines, and then we would go to the pool down the road, and then we would be in somebody else's backyard, and the entire time we were kids. We were outside and we were playing, and I would check in with my mom every once in a while. Hey, I'm still here, and then we would go again. We'd spend a lot of time riding our bikes and just kind of hanging out. The very first snow I ever saw was in Louisiana, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. And I think the entire town shut down because there was probably a half an inch on the ground. We tried our best to build little snow people. You can't build a snowman if you have a half inch of snow. But,
No.
that was our first, real experience. And then we moved to Virginia afterwards. In sixth grade, I ended up in Virginia, and that was real snow. we thought a half an inch was a lot when we lived in Louisiana, but I want to say in my brain it was 2 feet, probably wasn't 2 feet, but that's what I can recall. We lived in Northern Virginia just for that year, and then of course we moved to Colorado, and snows all the time. So I was getting myself prepared over the years for cold weather.
Well, I grew up in about 6 years in Virginia, Lynchburg at the time. And many mornings, my mom would wake me up and we'd have this long driveway we'd have to shovel. So yes, I know about the snow in Virginia. It was no fun. But moving forward, who were, like looking back in your childhood, who were your biggest influences? And then was there a specific conversation that you remember from that person that maybe influenced you? Brian first, or Mary Beth, either one?
Yeah, you want me to go first? Biggest influence for me. That's a tough question. I got into playing football. My first football team that I was on, they called it YAL. So it was like the Pop Warner in Colorado Springs. And, I played for a team called the Village Green Packers, and I was in fourth grade. My coach was Coach Pennington, and he was an old timer. And, he had an assistant coach whose son was also on the team. And, I wanted to be the quarterback. I wanted to be John Elway, right? And, that wasn't going to happen because the other coach's son was going to be John Elway. And so, the coach came up to me and he's like, well, what do you want to play? We want you to be our quarterback when we throw the football, but we really want you to be the running back. And, so, he's handing out jerseys. What number do you want to be? And I'm like, well, can't be 7 because I'm not the starting quarterback, right? And so I'm just thinking to myself, well, give me 30. I want to be Steve Sewell. And, Steve Sewell played quarterback in college and running back and receiver, and that's how they were going to use me. So, I think, and, I guess get back to your question, Austin, who influenced me the most was, honestly, I think it was my dreams that I had of playing football. I don't know if there's really one particular person that influenced me in my youth. Obviously, I had teachers, and I was in this. It was called talent development class, and I had teachers, but I always felt those teachers were transactional. I never felt they were real teachers. They were people that went to the church and they became teachers at the Christian church, and they were about their identity of being called a teacher. And so they would throw me into a corner and just say, "Go learn," right?
Right.
And so, teacher wise, nobody really influenced me as a teacher. I spent more time trying to cause trouble with them because I didn't want to be there. I did everything I could to get kicked out of school. I didn't want to be there, right? And so it wasn't the teachers that they were, they were transactional. And then when I got into coaching, or not into coaching, but when I got into athletics, there wasn't one coach that I really I felt like developed me. And so I spent a lot of time in the game of football teaching myself. Colorado Springs isn't known for a bedrock of developing football players, right? Everybody's a Denver Bronco fan, but there's not a lot of great football players coming out of Colorado Springs. And so I kind of developed myself through just my own passion that I had for the game and studying myself in the game. From getting books and looking at the pictures in the books, to watching TV, to I had an electric football game that had the
Yeah.
people, and I would draw the plays up with those people, and so it was all of that stuff. And then the guys that I played for, I felt they were, I played for them and I did what they asked me to do because I wanted to play the game of football. But I never felt like it was about the player. I always felt like it was about them as a coach.
Right.
They were a transactional type of guys. They're guys that they coached because they wanted their identity to be in coaching. And it was that transactional coach where it was about the coach first, the team second, and then maybe it was about the player and developing the player. And so that I never had anybody really develop me. I think I guess looking back, there's one person that really stood out to me and kind of helped me, I guess, transform my life a little bit. And he kind of spoke greatness into me. And I don't know, Ken, you may know him. I was a ball boy for, in Colorado Springs, they had the deaf and blind school, and they were doing a fundraiser. There was the deaf and blind versus Denver Broncos that were basketball players. And there was a guy that really took me, and I was a ball boy for the deaf and blind. And there's a guy that took me under his wing, and his name was Ken Woodard. He was number 52 for the Denver Broncos. And, he just really spoke a lot of like greatness in me. And he really took me under his wing and just was constantly telling me, oh, you can do whatever you want to do. Just put your heart into it, things like that. And so I think looking at my youth, it wasn't my coaches. It wasn't my teachers. It was a guy that played for the Denver Broncos that I looked up to.
Yeah. Awesome. What about you, Mary Beth?
We're trying to figure this whole like dual camera transitions happening right now. I'm so sorry. Most influential, honestly, I was a part of a dysfunctional family. But man, the adventures that we went on and vacations that we took, I believe my grandparents. My grandpa Lewis is the one. He lived in Wyoming. He was my mother's father.
Yeah.
I looked forward to spending summers up there because there was normalcy, and I knew without a question in my mind we were going to have fun. He was going to take us exploring and do all these crazy things. There was one time he caught a fish. We caught trout, and he cooked that trout at dinner. And my brother and sister and I were all sitting eating dinner with him, and my mom was also there. And he was the kind of guy that would eat the fish eyeball just to get a reaction, And it was something we just enjoyed. We enjoyed looking forward to that. And then on my dad's side of the family, my grandmother and grandfather Gamark, absolutely an influence in my life as well. They lived in Texas. So we also, if we weren't in Wyoming on vacation, we were in Texas. They lived in Dallas, the Dallas area. And then they later moved and they had a house on a lake. And we spent a lot of summers out there. They were the grandparents that would send me. I went to a Bible camp one summer because my grandmother said, you were going to learn about the Bible. And she sent me to this Bible camp. And I think that was the first time. And I want to say I was in fourth or fifth grade. It was the first time I believe I've ever actually looked at a Bible, was at this Bible camp. I had no idea what I was looking at or what I was reading or what the words meant. But she was determined to pour into me however she could. So we spent a lot of time. We would fish and we would swim and we would spend a lot of time outdoors. But my grandparents, absolutely, if I'm looking back, I would say would be those hero figures to me, people that I really enjoyed spending time with, that I knew there was normalcy in that situation. And it was a safe place for us to go and just be kids.
Awesome.
Mary Beth, did you say your maiden name was Lewis?
So no, my maiden name is Gamark, but
okay.
My mother's maiden name was Lewis.
I was going to say, because my son-in-law's name is Lewis, and he has a little boy that you just described. It's a explorer and loves to go out and do all those things. I was thinking of him as you said that, because I've had to go do that, and I'm not that way. So That's a great life.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun growing up that way.
So obviously, Brian, you talked about, sports and stuff like that, but do you remember like what maybe got you so passionate about it? And Mary Beth, I know you did sports as well. What, kind of started your passion for sports? Whether it's watching a Bronco game, like when you watched your first Bronco game, or, what got it, started for y'all?
I'll go. I'm gonna tilt the screen a little bit. For me, let's see what started it all. I just love the game of football. From an early age.
Yeah.
I think I was drawn to everything about the game, from the sights and sounds of the game, right?
Yeah.
The different colors and and things like that. I love the fact that when I was a kid, always dressed up. I was and so as a football player, you could dress up too, and put a helmet on, and really nobody saw your face. I think I like that part. Um, I think the other thing is I really like the violence of it, and I like the speed of the game of football, and it suited my personality. Um, and then I think growing up, I was a kid that, like I said, I went to I was in the special class, and so I didn't have a bunch of friends. And I was a very quiet person. Um, and when I played football, I was good at it. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good at reading. I wasn't good at writing. I couldn't do that stuff. And then when I would just go out there and play football, I was really good at it. And when I was put into that, into Pop Warner YAL, that first season, I played running back, quarterback, receiver, and I was just better than all the kids on the field. I was faster than everybody. I could see things before it happened, just because I was a very visual person. I enjoyed contact, so I like, I like the contact of it. Contact didn't bother me. I received a lot of contact growing up as a kid. And so, I enjoyed the contact, and I think I started to gain my identity as a football player
Mm.
at a young age. And so, in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and then also, obviously leading into high school, my identity wasn't, my identity was a football player. And, and people, when they would talk to me, whether they were adults, whether they were people my age, the conversation always was about football, because that's what they knew me as, was a football player. And so my identity started being drawn through football. And so I started getting, more confidence, all that kind of stuff through the game. And so what drew me to football was just everything about it. And then, then I got my identity through it, and it just kind of kept me there.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Mary Beth?
So, growing up, I was a gymnast.
Okay.
Gymnastics was my love. I loved Mary Lou Retton. I looked up to her. When I lived in Louisiana, my favorite thing about gymnastics is my mom brought me to a gymnastics camp at LSU. And that was the greatest experience of my life. I mean, you feel like an Olympian at LSU doing gymnastics camp. I loved it. I did it all the way, back in the day, which was a long time ago. We actually had gymnastics in middle school in Colorado, and we actually had gymnastics in high school. You don't see that anymore because it's all about club these days. But, back in the day, thank goodness, because my parents couldn't have afforded all that in that time. So I was on a team every year. And then I gained a love for soccer. I spent my middle school, high school years, played soccer, loved it, which gave me a passion for running. So in the off seasons, I would train with track and field, and I would train for soccer and for gymnastics. But certainly my love, vault was my ultimate favorite event. Loved it. I was horrendous at the bars. I could never be an all-around contender, but I loved the vault. I loved the floor exercises. Those were my two favorites. And of course, I didn't do all the fancy stuff you see today. But it was so much fun, and I spent I mean, I was little, first, second grade. I spent first, second grade all the way through high school as a gymnast, just kind of learning to love the sport and really looking up to those Olympic athletes who were just superstars, watching them through the years. So that's kind of how.
Mary Beth, this is why I love these podcasts. Man, we have so much in common. With my third child, my second daughter, was a level 9 gymnast. And so we've spent many days watching gymnastics, and that is a tough sport. So, boy, hats off to you.
Yeah, so much fun, but yes, very difficult. People don't realize.
Yes. I used to watch it like this because I didn't want to see if she fell.
I think that's why we never really pushed gymnastics on our children. Not that we push athletics on our children, but we never really gave it as an option. Like, hey, why don't you try? We never really said, hey, try gymnastics. We said, why don't you try X, Y, and Z instead? So luckily, we didn't have to be that parent that sat there closing their eyes.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Austin, you want to jump to high school?
Yeah. So, just give us a little bit of a background about all the sports you played. I know you said and then, maybe your favorite sports memory that you had from high school growing up.
All right. So what was the first question, Austin?
Just all the sports you played. And then what was your favorite sports memory?
Okay. All the sports I played. So I guess rewind a little bit, back to Hilltop, back to that K through 12 school. In 7th grade, I decided to try out for the varsity football team that they had at the high school, and but they played 8-man football. It was a small school. They played 8-man football, and so I ended up playing as a 7th grader on the high school team. Started as a fullback. And just absolutely got destroyed every game because, I'm a 7th grader. I don't even think I had gone through puberty yet, and I'm going against guys.
And you're running ISO and you're kicking out on power.
And so I didn't do very good. But my whole goal was to be a Denver Bronco.
Yeah.
And I knew that I couldn't be a Denver Bronco, or in my head, I didn't think I could be a Denver Bronco playing 8-man football. And I wanted to play for the local high school, right? And so I started finding ways to get out of that school.
Yeah.
And ended up getting myself kicked out after endless times and, years and years of trying to get kicked out. I finally got myself kicked out of school. And so now I have to go to the local public school and ended up going to Doherty High School. Doherty High School was the biggest high school in Colorado Springs, and so you played against all the Denver schools. Those were your conference schools. So Cherry Creek, Overland, teams like that were the teams that were in our district, and and so played at Doherty High School. Had a great time playing at Doherty High School. I did play other sports, but the other sports that I played was to prepare me to go be a college football player so that I could make the NFL and play for the Denver Broncos someday. And so I wrestled. I wrestled in middle school, and then I wrestled 1 year in high school, and then walked away from wrestling because I didn't want to hurt myself for football. I played baseball. Really my passion besides football, I really love baseball. But played baseball also growing up. Played into high school. I guess I have two fond memories of playing in high school. Obviously, it's I can think about games and plays and wins and losses and things like that. But I think that there's two main things that really stick out in my mind as an athlete. Growing up in Colorado Springs through the Parks and Recs, through middle school, through high school. I think the first one is when I was younger and I was playing for the Village Green Packers, and I was, like I said, I was the fastest kid on the field. I love contact, and so I in my mind I was good. And it was around Halloween time, and we were in Colorado Springs. There was a mall. It's called the Austin Bluffs Mall. And around Halloween time, you would go to the Austin Bluffs Mall and you'd go trick-or-treating at each of the stores, and they would do uh, costume contests and things like that, and the whole town would go to it. And it was a Saturday afternoon. Well, that Saturday morning, I had a game, and it was the Village Green Packers, and we were playing. I don't remember who we were playing, and it's halftime, and my coach walks up to me and he's like, "You need to get it together. Your head is not in the game. You are thinking about going trick or treating at Austin Bluffs Mall. Like, I would need you to start playing better." And I'm just looking at him. I'm like, I didn't understand what he was saying, because in the first half, I had caught a touchdown as a receiver. I threw a touchdown as a quarterback, and I had a running touchdown on the very first play of the game as a running back. And I'm like, I'm not playing like myself. I didn't understand it, and I could care less about trick or treating. I didn't want to be around a bunch of people. I didn't like people.
Yeah.
So I didn't care about. I wanted to play football, and so I had no idea what he was talking about. And the more I thought about it, and the more I look back on it, I know what he was talking about now, and I knew what he was talking about as I played into that game. And it was when I was Steve Sewell that season. I was number 30, Steve Sewell, right? Throw the football, catch the football, run the football. That's who I was. Well, in that particular game, again, I'm 12 years old. In that particular game, I didn't want to be Steve Sewell. I wanted to be number 47, Gerald Wilhite. And Jared Wilhite, every time Gerald Wilhite got tackled, he was always doing a flip in the air, right? He was always flying through the air. He was getting, he was just always in the air. I wanted to be Gerald Wilhite. And so every time I ran the football, I would run the football really fast, but then I would slow down so that they could come tackle me, so that I could jump in the air and somebody would hit me in my leg so I could do a flip through the air and land on the ground. And that's what I wanted to be that day. I wanted to be Gerald Wilhite. And my coach didn't want me to be Gerald Wilhite. He wanted me just every time I get the football, he just wanted me to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
And so he took the fun away from it. And, that was that transactional coach that I played for. And then when I look into high school, it was, I was a captain as a 10th grader, the first captain to be a 10th grader. So I started 10th, 11th, 12th at Doherty. Had a great, good career. I don't know if I'd say great career, but a good enough career to get recruited. I started getting recruited early on, when I was in high school. But my biggest memory when it comes to football in high school was I was walking off the football field. It was going into my junior season. And my baseball coach was also our statistician. So he took our stats during games, right?
Yeah.
And he happened to be there during two-a-days. Well, he wasn't happy with me because I didn't play summer ball for him. I decided I wanted to go box that summer. So I went and boxed at 3D boxing and across the street from the Olympic Training Center because I wanted to have faster hands, and I wanted to get I just loved getting hit. And so I boxed that summer instead of playing travel baseball for him. And I'm walking off the practice field, and he walks over to me and he says, "Hey, Ferg," nobody called me by my first name that really knows me. They're like, he's like, "Hey, Ferg, come here." So I walked over to him, and he said, "You can't be great at two things." And I looked at him. I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You can't be a great football player and you can't be a great baseball player. You need to make a decision." And so I looked at him, and I said, "All right, my decision's made." And I walked away from him and never played baseball again until I went to college and tried out for the baseball team. So my memories were of transactional people in my life that wanted something out of me for their own glorification, for their own to improve their identity. And so those are really my two biggest memories of high school.
Yeah. Mary Beth, what about your any sports memories that you have of the sports that you played?
I did gymnastics in high school. I also did soccer in high school.
Yeah.
And I, after being a gymnast for as long as I was, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did soccer. Soccer really became my passion. And I was a starter for many years on the soccer field. I was striker. My daughter to this day doesn't believe that I was a really good soccer player. I was good. I would score a lot of goals. I loved the camaraderie of the team. I loved the the quickness of it. I loved the contact as well. I did. I enjoyed, kind of getting close to those girls and elbowing it up with them. And, I was relatively fast. My family doesn't believe that to this day, but I was at the time, I was pretty good.
Seems like they're picking on the mom.
It's typical in the family. I am the person. It's okay. So it was lots of great memories on the soccer field. I really enjoyed it. I don't have any one particular memory, honestly, that I can think of. Besides the fact that I played at Coronado High School, which was just up the road from Doherty High School, and the two of us didn't even know the other person existed at that time. So we were just right across town, didn't know each other at all. I was kind of living my life up on the mountain by Garden of the Gods. We could see Garden of the Gods right outside the back window of our high school. And he was kind of down in the valley, a little bit away from me. But the majority of my time, if I wasn't in gymnastics, I was training in the winter with the track program so that I could get faster for soccer, because that was my love and my passion at that time.
Yeah.
Well, let's transition into college and tell us where you went to school. And if my memory's correct, I think you guys meet at this time of your life. Tell us a little bit about your college experience, where you went, maybe what sports you played, and how you all met.
Yeah. So, coming out of high school, coming out of Doherty, I was recruited. Wasn't heavily recruited, but I was recruited by all the small colleges in the area, and I was, recruited by some of the D1s. And I thought I was going to go to Colorado State. The head coach at the time was Earl Bruce, and so I thought I was committed to go to Colorado State. And then Earl Bruce got fired. I think he got fired there's reasons why he got fired. And so I was kind of, oh no, what am I going to do now? I'm not, I got a letter from Colorado State stating that they've put all recruiting on hold until they hire a new coach, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, wow, what am I going to do now? And so I ended up signing with Adams State College, or Adams State University, out of high school. They gave me the most, and, they showed that, the most interest. And so I started my college career at Adams State College in Alamosa, Colorado. Was there for 2 years, played there for 2 years. Going into my sophomore year, the summer of our sophomore year, the two of us, we worked together. In that whole summer, we worked together at Portal Pool. It was a local pool in the area, and we were both lifeguards. And so we worked together as lifeguards, and so we spent every single day together, and we started dating and all that kind of stuff. And then 2 days before I was supposed to report to camp, we decided, okay, hey, we're going to spend all day on Friday together, at work, and then, go to dinner, movies, whatever, Friday night. Then we spent all day on Saturday together at work. We spent Saturday night together. And then we spent Sunday morning together, and I was supposed to leave on Monday up to Alamosa, up to Adams State, to start two-a-days. And we had noticed that, Mary Beth's mom, was missing. And we decided, it was Sunday morning, and, she tells me, I haven't seen my mom in 2 days. What should we do? And so we're like, well, let's give it to this afternoon. Let's see if your mom shows up this afternoon. Well, her mom didn't show up Sunday afternoon, so we ended up driving downtown Colorado Springs. We fill out a missing persons report, and then come back to the house, and we're sitting around her house, and I noticed that there was a vacuum cleaner hose missing. And, I told Mary Beth, I said, there's a hose missing on your vacuum cleaner. And, she's like, oh. And she's like, well, my mom's been depressed in the past or whatever. and she had told me that if she ever did anything, where she would do it at. And I'm like, oh boy, what did I get myself into, right? We've been dating for 3 months, or for the summer, which was about 3 months, right? Mm-hmm. So we get in the car, we drive up to Manitou Springs, Colorado, which was just above, Colorado Springs. And, we see her mother's car parked down by in a field, and walked down to the field. And, I told Mary Beth to stay up top, and walked down to the field and found her mother. And then wow. The next day, I had to leave. That Monday I had to leave to go up to Adams State to go to two-a-days, and it was hard. So, yeah.
Mm. Mary Beth, what's going through your heart and mind during that time?
How am I supposed to talk after? I didn't know we were leewaying into that. Yeah, so I guess backing it up a little bit, I was at Colorado State University for my freshman year.
Yeah.
I did not go to play athletics. I really wasn't that good to be, recruited. I did play club soccer there. Loved it. Okay. Had a wonderful time. We traveled a ton. Brian and I met the summer before. We worked together the summer before my freshman year. But it wasn't until after our freshman year that we really started to date, one another, and kind of noticed each other at the pool. We were lifeguards together. And so the intention was, at the end of that summer, he was going back to Adams State, and I was going to go back to Colorado State, and we were going to, do this long-term dating thing and just kind of see how things worked out. Well, plans quickly changed, with my mom. And my parents divorced back in middle school, and I was old enough. It probably shouldn't have been this way, but at the time, I was old enough to make a decision which parent to live with. And so I chose to live with my mom, and my siblings they really didn't get a choice because they were too young, but they ended up living with my dad. And so at that time in high school, I lived with my mom, very, very dysfunctional situation. She was, she was having a lot of issues, with her mental, with depression, and she was manic, and she was depressive, and she was having these psychoses and all of these different things. And it wasn't the first time that she had attempted to take her life. So she had attempted to take her life 2 times, other times while I was living with her. She ended up in a mental hospital for a week at a time. And I continued to be allowed to live with her, which in retrospect, looking back, I wonder in my mind, how in the world was I allowed still to stay in this situation? But I was in the situation, and I did that for really my whole high school career. I kind of watched my mom dissolve and unfold. And, it wasn't until that summer that unfortunately she took it one step too far. But in, moving forward, if it wasn't for that tragic event in our lives, we would not have met each other. I mean, we met each other at the pool, but that was the driving force that brought us together. I was then left to live on my own. I decided not to go back to Colorado State. I wasn't prepared to do that. So I stayed in town. I went to UCCS, which is just a local college. They've grown tremendously over the years, but it's a local college in Colorado Springs. And so I had a roommate, went to UCCS for that first year. And was it the middle of the year that you came back, or did you make it through your whole?
Middle of the year. Middle of the year.
Looking back, I always feel so bad. His football career ended because he loved me. His love for me was the reason he didn't play football. So I'm totally to blame for it, but I don't, I actually am, I'm blessed that it ended up working out that way. So he ended up going to a junior college for one semester, Pikes Peak Community College, just to kind of, because he still needed to be in school, obviously. And then the two of us ended up at University of Northern Colorado, and we were there for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
For 2 years, we were at University of Northern Colorado. we both went there together. So we were finally on campus together, going to school together, kind of drawing closer in our relationship with one another. And that's kind of where that transition to UNC went for us. So.
Well, and what happened was when I left to Adams State for 2-a-days, you know, trying to digest everything that had just happened, plus playing the game of football, plus being away from her. And, you know, really she was the first person in my life that was a transformational person, that she changed my life. Right. And she let me be me. And so I went off to Adams State, and, you know, it was the first game of the season. We were playing Idaho State, and it was up in Pocatello, Idaho. And, you know, I was doing my normal game day ritual. I'd walk around the field. I had my headphones in. I'd be listening to Metallica, getting my mind ready to play. And I was just like, what am I doing? Why am I playing this game of football? Like, it's not any fun anymore. You know, it's just people want things from you. Nobody's really investing in me. They just want things from me. They just want me to make them look good. I never really had anybody really just invest and teach me the game of football for me. And I'm like, what am I doing? I got this person that I'm in love with that's hurting and that needs me. And so after that game, I decided I wasn't going to stay at Adams State after the season was over. And then when, you know, the season ended, and so I went back to Colorado Springs to be with her and help her through the grieving process, through the healing process. And then we transferred up to Northern Colorado, and I was going to play at Northern Colorado. There was the full intentions to play football at Northern Colorado. And of course the transfer rules at the time made it so I could practice and not play. And so I really never got on the field playing because of, you know, when I left Adams State, the head coach that I played for said I stabbed him in his back and he wouldn't release me from my scholarship, and I was going to have to sit and this, that, and the other. And so I never really got to really finish it out the way I wanted to on the playing field.
What a beautiful story of your relationship. And, you know, as we talked beforehand, before we got on the air, the thing that I have been so encouraged through this podcast is just the stories that people have walked through and how they help other people. And before we move to the coaching journey, Mary Beth, having been through what you have been through with your mom, if we had a listener out there today that is going through that right now, how would you encourage them?
That's a hard one. At the time this whole thing happened, I was not saved. I was not a Christian. I didn't go to school. I didn't study a Bible. So listeners today, I mean, man, you have to surround yourself with people that can be that support system for you. Brian was that support system for me. He was that person that came alongside of me. And no matter what the situation, my brother and sister and my dad and my stepmother at the time, they were living in Alaska. I had nobody. I didn't have any family in the area. And I had nowhere to go. Like, I wanted to stay. I wanted to finish out my time. I wanted to get my degree, and I wanted to stay close to Brian. But keeping yourself around people is the biggest support system that you can have. Positive people. I was around, you know, it was very easy to be drugged into, you know, the world of partying or the world of drugs. That would have been very, very easy to do, you know, when you're in that mindset and you're a college student. But to get yourself with that positive person, and man, if you have faith in what God can do in your life, be grounded in the Bible. I fully believe. Now, at the time, I did not, but I fully believe in the power of prayer and what prayer can do and how God listens to prayer. And he knows what you need when you need it at that time. And he knew that I needed Brian. Like he provided him for that purpose to allow us to grow in our relationship.
Well, thank you for your transparency and your beautiful relationship, which we're going to see it even more here. But here's what I'd like to do. As I was telling you, Brian, yesterday, you know, just imagine the four of us sitting around the kitchen table, and we have so much in common in this next part. And I just want to try to draw our listeners in to really see behind the scenes of a coaching journey. And so, Brian, as you walk us through from your first opportunity in Tampa to Tusculum, I want to stop at Tusculum, as he's sharing with us this journey from his perspective, having done this myself for 35 years and been married for 38 to my beautiful wife, the part that some people don't understand or get to see is what is going through the mind of the wife when this journey's occurring. There's moves, you got family issues. So what is going on in the midst of Mary Beth's heart and mind and her children, all of that together? So Brian, start to walk us through your journey, and Mary Beth, wherever you feel led to interject that, yeah, this is what I was thinking when that was occurring. So.
All right. So, we graduate from University of Northern Colorado, and we had to leave the Springs, or we had to leave Colorado. We wanted to get away. We wanted to get away from that, all the different hurts that we had experienced there. And so we ended up moving to Clearwater, Florida. And I was working in cardiac rehab in Clearwater, Florida, making about $35,000 a year, fresh out of college. To me, that was good money. Mary Beth was working at a place called Park. It was a
center for people with disabilities, severe disabilities that couldn't live on their own, kids and adults.
Yeah.
In St. Petersburg.
And I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I'm working in cardiac rehab, and it was good, but it wasn't me.
Are you married at this point?
Nah, so we were living together. We packed up a U-Haul. We moved to Clearwater, Florida. We didn't have a job. Neither one of us had a job. We didn't have a house to live. We had the U-Haul for 7 days, and so we had to find a place to live and find a job and unpack the U-Haul within 7 days.
You forgot the part that we rolled into town.
Oh yeah.
We drove into town, and we're all excited about this journey. And I don't know if I lived in Florida, but I was little. And I didn't remember that when you drove into Florida, on the left side of town, the left side of the street, beautiful homes. But on the right side of the street, it could look pretty bad. So, and it doesn't even have to be neighborhood. It could just be across the street. And so I remember driving down the road, and I just lost it. I started to bawl. I'm like, what are we doing? This is where you've moved me to? What are we doing in our Utah? And we don't have a place to live. So yeah, that was my perspective. My perspective will be entertaining all day, I think.
Good.
Yeah. So we ended up finding a place to live, and so we're living together, and we're finding jobs. And of course, like I said, I found a job at Morton Platt Meads Hospital, and I was working in cardiac rehab, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And we're driving home one day, and I said, I looked at Mary Beth, I'm like, I want to be a football coach. She's like, awesome. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be just like a Pop Warner football coach. I don't want to be just a high school football coach. I want to take this thing as far as I can take it. And she's like, go for it. Go do it. And so I went home, made a resume, sent it out to the local high schools, and ended up, my first job was at Largo High School in Largo, Florida, which is a suburb of, you have Clearwater, Largo, St. Petersburg. And so I was at Largo, Florida, and I was the JV head coach, the JV offensive coordinator, the JV defensive coordinator, the JV special teams coordinator, and then I coached the wide receivers on the varsity.
Man, you can't blame anybody but yourself on that.
Yeah. And, and I loved it. I got, running the JV program, the head coach, he allowed me to do whatever I wanted with the JV team. And so everything from structuring practice, and it was me and a science teacher at the high school, and he knew nothing about football. And so really I just did everything, and he scheduled the buses. And so, I did everything from the practice plans to, the offense, structuring the defense and special teams to, how I wanted it. And, we played Clearwater High School. Clearwater High School was Largo High School's rivalry. You'll play them the first game of the year. We ended up losing that game. The JV played first on a Thursday night, and we lost that game. And I came home, and I was just like, I was crushed, but I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to coach. Like, I felt the the energy, the adrenaline, the passion for those kids. I was like, this is it. I want to coach. And so I was, I was going to be at Largo High School as a coach. And there was a guy in my cardiac rehab. He was an old timer, and he used to be a sports writer for Sports Illustrated. And he covered a bunch of events, and he was always telling me the stories. And, he knew I wanted to be a coach. And he's like, well, I can help you out. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, get a hold of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tell them you want to intern for them. I said, awesome. So in 1998, I ended up interning for training camp with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So their season's over in 98, 99. And I wrote Coach Dungy a letter and Mark Asanovich a letter. And I said, thank you for giving me the opportunity to volunteer for training camp. I would love to do it again next season. Oh, and if you have anything else, please let me know. And sent them the letter or email. And they contacted me back the next day, a guy named Mark Asanovich. And, Mark called me. He said, hey, why don't you come over and let's talk. And I said, okay. So I drove over to One Buck Place. At the time, it was behind the airport over in Tampa. And in trailers. We had trailers. It was crazy. And so I met with Dungy and I met with Mark Asanovich. And they said what they do is they bring in 4 guys from around the United States, as interns for the off season. And you do everything. You're going to work in strength and conditioning. So you're going to take players through their off-season workouts. You're going to take guys out on the field through their running. You're going to take guys through individual drills. So you're going to do it all. You're going to run copies. You're going to do whatever basically we would tell you to do. And he told me we have 3 spots that have already been filled. And he said, do you want our 4th spot? I said, yeah, that sounds awesome. Right. And, what's the kicker? Right. He said, all right, so here's what we do is you're going to start February 1st, and you're going to report every morning at 5 a.m., and you're going to work till 6 p.m. And you report February 1st, and from February 1st until training camp starts. And back then, training camp started like the last week of July, first week of August, right? You're not going to get paid any money.
Yes. As a coach's wife, that's when we get excited.
Oh yeah, yes.
And so he's like, we're not going to pay you at all. And he said, and then what we're going to do is when training camp starts, 2 out of you 4, 2 guys get cut. And then we're going to keep 2 of you guys on for the season, and then we're going to start paying you. But it wasn't very much money. Right. And he's like, so do you want to do it? And, I'm working in cardiac rehab, making $35,000 a year. It's just the 2 of us. $35,000 in 1999 was a lot of money for me who come from nothing, for her who comes from nothing. Right. And so I was like, yeah, I want to do it. But let me go home and talk to my fiance girlfriend at the time. Right. Let me talk to her because let me make sure I can do it financially. And so drove home, told her about it, and told her this is the kicker though. I'm not going to get paid no money. I got to quit my job because I'm going to be there 40 plus hours a week. Should we do it? And she gave me the thumbs up. Let's go do it. Let's.
What are you thinking, Mary Beth?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I was crazy out of my mind. But it's funny looking back, like I don't realize how God has put pieces together until we're just talking to you. I'm looking back thinking I was working at this place called Park. I loved it. I was the recreational therapist, and I worked with kids with very severe disabilities that they couldn't even live in their homes. They had to live in this group home. My job was to take these kids into the community. I would do rec therapy with them. I loved it. I loved it. However, God planted in my heart that you need to go and become a special ed teacher. And I didn't go to school for education. I was a psychology, kinesiology major. I thought I was going to be a sports therapist. That was kind of what I wanted to do. And looking back, God did that on purpose. God did that on purpose, knowing that he was going to take a job that wasn't going to pay any money, and that I needed to start figuring out, what I wanted to do long term as well. So then I started taking education courses in special education. And in that process, he's working for nothing, and I'm working at Park, and I'm starting to take courses so that I can get my license to be a teacher. So crazy. If you look back to see how God works all things out, right? There's a purpose and a plan, and looking back, he did that on purpose. So crazy.
Yeah, so I ended up spending, the 99-2000 season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, so camp, once training camp came, they kept me. So I started making money, but it wasn't a lot of money. It was, I think I was making $10 an hour, but I couldn't work over, they wouldn't pay me over 40 hours, even though I was working more than 40 hours. So it wasn't a lot of money. And so, I would pick up odd and end jobs at nighttime.
Was that the time when you were cleaning pools?
No, that was in NFL Europe. But yeah, we were I was working night jobs, and then in 2000, it was that 2000 season, and the stress of it all kind of hit me, and we weren't married yet, and in 2000, I can remember it very vividly again with my memory that I have. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. I had just done, they made me do plate checks every day. So I had to go through the weight room, and every single machine had to have 845s, 225, so I had to do plate checks every morning at 4:35 a.m. before any of the players or coaches got in there to make sure everything was just detail oriented. Right. And I went to the bathroom, and I was in so much pain, and there was just blood everywhere. And, I was having a lot of pain in my stomach, and I'm like, what's going on? And I don't have insurance because my job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wasn't full time. So I don't have insurance, right? If I had any injuries, I'd go see Todd Terselli, who was our trainer, and he would help me out. And, but I was in a lot of pain, losing, just going to the bathroom all the time and losing a lot of blood when I went to the bathroom, and, losing weight and all that kind of stuff. And, so I ended up going to a walk-in clinic, and a free walk-in clinic in Clearwater, because that's where we were living. I was commuting over to Tampa across the bridge, and ended up getting diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And it was the stresses of an NFL season. There was the stresses of, if our light bulb goes out in our kitchen, we have no money to replace it, type of thing. And, so it was those stresses of life that, just really ate my stomach up and, caused this disease to happen. And then so we ended up going to, did we tell this one? The justice of
Sure. I mean, we may as well just let it all out right now.
We ended up going to the justice.
I love Mary Beth, Brian. You've been hiding her from us.
So we ended up going to the justice of the peace and getting married so that I could get onto her insurance. So, we were going to get married, but,
we did that in July. It was the end of July. And at that time I was a teacher. So I was a special ed teacher, finally got to that place. I had a full-time job, but I had until August 1st to get my spouse on the insurance. We were scheduled to be married. Like, we had it on the books. We were going to be married, September 27th of 2001. That's when our wedding date was, we had everything lined up. Right. And then this happened in July, and we realized we can't wait an entire year for him to, he was sick. I've never seen him so sick. He needed help. He needed medical help that we couldn't provide, that the walk-in clinic couldn't provide. He needed a specialist. So we went into the justice of the peace. And that's not something that we've ever been like, hey, we got married on this date, but that's not really our real wedding date. But we don't count July 31st or whatever that date was in July. But we did that because he needed that help. And we knew, that we were going to be married.
Yes.
We knew that. We were that couple that we wanted to get married for a long time, but we lived check to check to check. We didn't have a ton of money, for him to get me a ring and for us to have the perfect wedding. But it was the right time. It was the time that we needed to make things official. before the Lord, and
Yeah.
that was how that worked.
Yeah. So ended up, once that happened, ended up getting better. And then Coach Dungy helped me get over to NFL Europe. And that's really where, to me, I blossomed as a football coach and as a person. And in 2001, went to NFL Europe with the Rhine Fire, and was coaching with the Rhine Fire.
Yep.
And the offensive coordinator that I worked for was awesome. And he was an old timer. His name was Joe Clark, and he was coming off of brain surgery, and he was an old timer. And the O-line coach, his name was Mike Bender. They actually just did a movie on him called Woodlong or Bullsworth.
Oh, yeah.
The movie Bullsworth. He had Coach Bullsworth at Arkansas, and so I was just really learning a lot of how to become a football coach from this old timer Joe Clark and Mike Bender, and then the head coach that I worked for, Pete Kaharchek. I just owe him so much because he had so much trust and faith in me. I was 26 years old. I'm coaching guys that were my age. He had so much faith and trust in me, and he just let me go and just let me coach. And so that 2001 season was with the Rhine Fire. And then I come back in 2002 with the Rhine Fire, and we had a new coaching staff. Coach Kaharchek was still the head coach, but the offensive coordinator now was Mike Jones, and Mike Jones was with the Rhine Fire, left the Rhine Fire, went to the XFL, and then came back to the Fire, and so Mike Jones was the offensive coordinator, and then our offensive line coach was Whitey Jordan. And those two just really took me under their wings, and I just learned so much about the game of football from the details and things like that from Mike Jones. And then I really learned the X's and O's from Whitey Jordan. And I would just sit there, and I just wanted to know everything that Whitey knew, everything that Mike knew. And so I would just sit there and I would pick their brain and memorize everything, not memorize, but remember everything that they said, from the way that they talked to the players to how they coached the drills to how they were in the meeting rooms and things like that. And then Coach Kaharchek, he let me coach the running backs. He gave me a position group. So I was the strength coach, but I also coached a position, and Coach Kaharchek he just let me go and just let me learn. And so I spent 3 years with the Rhine Fire, and that was 2001, 2002, 2003. And Mary Beth wasn't with me. She didn't come over to Dusseldorf, Germany. She had to, I was the lowest paid guy on the Rhine Fire staff. I was making $5,000.
Mary Beth, you went from 0 to 5,000. though. That's a big raise.
So we're making, little gains, right? Little gains.
Yeah, and so I wasn't making a lot of money, and so it wasn't like she could come and live with me over in Dusseldorf, Germany, in the hotel that we all lived in the Relaxa Hotel. And so she was in Clearwater, and and I was 10 weeks over in NFL Europe, just getting a crash course on how to be a real football coach.
Austin, you're grinning from ear to ear. Before we hear Mary Beth, what's going through your head?
Well, it's just, living in a hotel, the word Dusseldorf, Germany. I mean, that was where I grew up a lot of my life. I say that's the best part of, my growing up years, is going over for 3 months out of the year, living in a hotel, and you're throwing names out there like Mike Jones and Pete Kaharchek. I mean, I would eat lunch with those guys, and Whitey Jordan. They're all familiar people to me. So I don't know. It just brings a smile to my face.
So Mary Beth, all the wives that spend time away from their husbands, bring us to what was that like for you with him being in Europe and you're at home?
So yeah, we're going to go back in time. Justice of the Peace was the end of July. Wedding date was September 27th. And what we failed to tell you was we were 10 months pregnant at that time. And
awesome.
At the time of the wedding, September 27th, 9/11 had happened 16 days before.
Well, and I was also it was my first season in NFL Europe in 2001. So we had training camp in Tampa, so that part was nice. I wasn't away from her, and then we flew over to our city, and I was in Dusseldorf for about 2 days, and she calls me up and she says, "Hey Brian, I'm pregnant." I'm like, "Oh boy."
So I was able to visit him that first season that he was over there. I was, maybe 8 weeks pregnant or something. So that was a wonderful experience. A couple of the coaches' wives, whose wife was
Mike Bender's wife.
Yeah, she was amazing. She took me on a tour of that area, and we explored. I actually saw more of Germany and that part of Europe than Brian ever got to see. Right, you don't get to see that as a coach, but we would take cruises down the Rhine River and visit the different castles, and we went to Holland, and it was a wonderful time. And I think I was there for a couple of weeks. I visited. The second season, that was after we had gotten married. We had Blaine, our oldest, and he was how old? A year at that time, and there was no way that I was traveling.
It wasn't a year. He's probably 6 months.
Yeah, he was born. Well, yeah, he was born in November, end of November. So there was no way I was traveling over to Europe. So he spent the next 2 football seasons, NFL Europe football seasons, over in Europe, and then I was in the Clearwater Largo area. I was teaching at the time, which, like I said, not in my plans at all when I was in college. God absolutely planted that on my heart. And so I was a special ed teacher in Florida. Luckily, at the time, his grandparents on his mother's side of the family lived in St. Petersburg, and his great aunt also lived in St. Petersburg. And so when I was working, they were a part. They would help watch Blaine at the time, and it was a blessing. But during that whole season is when they started planting the seeds of the gospel in my heart. I still wasn't saved. I hadn't been to that point. I didn't have a relationship with Christ, and it was because of his family, his grandparents, and that.
Yeah, and also kind of leading into that story was, so after the 2002 season, we ended up going to the World Bowl. We played the Berlin Thunder, and we played them in Rhine Stadium, and we were favored to win. My running back was Jamal Robertson, and he was NFL Europe Player of the Year. Our quarterback was T. Martin. We had Darnell Dinkins as a tight end. We were favored to win, and we lost the game. T got hurt early in the game. But so we lose to Berlin, and to Todd Husak, and Dane Looker was, quarterback to receiver. That's all I heard all game long. They just tore it up. But when the season was over, I went back to Tampa, and Mike Jones called me up, and he said, "Hey, there's a tight ends job open at Liberty University. Are you interested in applying for the job?" And I said, "Yeah, Mike, I would love to. This $5,000 I'm making a season is tough. I'm coming home and I'm cleaning pools in Tampa Bay, Florida, to make ends meet, and that was absolutely miserable. In the heat of Florida." And so I flew up to Liberty in 2002, and I got they flew me up from Tampa, up to Lynchburg, and I don't know if it was a GA or a student assistant. Somebody picked me up at the airport, and they brought me to the hotel, and they handed me my itinerary, and I look at the itinerary, and it's detailed oriented. At this time, you're meeting with this person and this person and this person and this person. And of course, the last meeting of the day was with Coach Karcher. And but I'm looking at the itinerary, and there's guys on there: Steve Carson, Mickey Mays. And I'm like, "Oh, I got this job. Like, these guys know me, right?" And so I wake up in that next morning, and the first guy scheduled to interview me was at breakfast, and there was a little diner right attached to the hotel that I stayed in, and it was a guy named Ed Gomes, and he was the spiritual leader of the football program. And so I'm sitting down at breakfast with Ed Gomes, and so he's grilling me on questions, and obviously his questions that he wants to know is, he want to know my profession of faith. And so I'm going through my spiel. I went to a Christian school, went to church, accepted God into my heart. this, that, and the other. And, so I'm just telling them about my profession of faith, that I'm a Christian, right? But Christianity to me at the time was transactional. It was, if I didn't sin, if I did what God wanted me to do, if I prayed, then God would answer my prayers. That was the relationship I had with God. It was a transactional relationship. But, as I'm talking to Ed Gomes, he asked me the next question, a hard question. He asked me, he's like, how about your wife? Is your wife saved? And I look at him and I'm like, well, I can't lie to Ed Gomes, the spiritual leader of Liberty University. Liberty University, the greatest Christianity college in America, right? And I look at Ed and I'm like, Ed, I don't know. I said, I don't know. I said, I know she believes in God, but has she ever personally asked him to be her Lord and Savior? Has she been baptized? I said, I don't know. I said, we don't go to church. I can't answer your question. And so the interview's over, and I go through the rest of the interview, and I'm killing it. I think I'm doing a good job. But there's guys at Liberty that I know, and I really wanted the Liberty job. We had just had Blaine. I was going to be able to start making real money. We were going to be in what we thought was going to be an environment where Blaine could grow up in a great Christian environment. So we wanted the job, and so I go through the whole interview process, and I think there's guys here that I have connections with. I have a great chance of getting this job. So fly back to Tampa. She picks me up at the airport, and she asked me, she's like, so you think you got the job? And I just look at her, and I'm like, I don't think I got the job, Mary Beth. And she's like, well, why? I mean, Mike Jones knows Ken Karcher, Mickey Mays, and I'm like, I don't know. I said, there's just something in my spirit that just telling me I didn't get, there's another reason why I was there. And so I told her, I said, they asked me if you're saved, if you believe in God. And she's like, wow, so you don't get the job because of me? And so then we started, at the same time, I had a great aunt that was really working on her. And then so we ended up going to church that next Sunday. And, you remember from there, you want to,
Yeah. Her name was Great Aunt Norma Green. And she poured into me. We started going to church. We brought Blaine with us to church, and they would pray. His grandfather, Grandpa Green and Grandma Green, were also in that same. They lived in a little trailer park in St. Pete. They were the snowbirds, right? They would come down for the summer, and then they would go back. So she poured into me. And we would go to church, and she was encouraging, and had a Bible. And then at that time, in that same time frame, I ended up getting my own Bible at the time. And then like a year or so later, I ended up asking Christ into my heart. I want to say I was 27, 26 years old, and I was baptized in the church that we went to. And it was life-changing, just that salvation, that peace in my life that I'm like, this is the most important thing, not the amount of money that we have in our bank account and, where we work, but we were invested. We finally felt like we belonged. We had a sense of belonging, and we were at peace.
And then from there we went. So after Rhine Fire was over, we moved up to Jacksonville, Florida.
Well, we had our second son.
Yeah, we had our second son, Bryce.
Second son before we moved up to Florida.
And we moved up to Jacksonville, Florida, and I took a job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and was with the Jaguars in 2005. Season was over. We lost to the Patriots in the playoff game. I go into the hospital the next day because of my disease. They ended up cutting 3 feet of my large out. We've got two young kids at home. I laid in the hospital for a month and a half.
I think we had Bryn at that time too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets a little blurry,
It does, doesn't
very
it?
blurry with certain details. But at that time, I think Bryn was, she's our first firstborn daughter at that time.
We
and
had
she
her
was
after the hospital.
she was really young. She was little. So we had 3 young children.
Yeah.
He's super sick, recovering from surgery,
And then ended up leaving the Jaguars during that surgery because I couldn't do it. And then got back on my feet, and once I got back on my feet, went to Jacksonville University, and then, which was the FCS program at the time, and then went back to the Jaguars for another year. And then from there, we went up to Tiffin University up in Ohio. Spent 2 years at Tiffin University. Worked for a great man in Dave Olkowski. He had, he was great to our family, and we spent 2 years there, but we didn't win any football games, and so Dave got let go. And so when Dave got let go, it was, oh boy, here we go again. What do we finally got that full-time college job where we were somewhat comfortable. We didn't care for Ohio much. It was cold.
I have very similar feelings.
Yeah. But so we're just like, okay, here we go. We're looking for a job again, and this time it was back to pro football, and Arena Football called me up, and there's a guy named Les Moss, and Les Moss was his dad was a legend, football Hall of Fame, was a head coach at Florida State, his dad was a legend, and Pete Kaharchek got me in contact with Les Moss, and Les Moss wanted to hire me because of the fact that I coached for Pete Kaharchek, that I coached for Whitey Jordan. He knew Mike Jones. He knew Adrian White, who was our DB coach. So they hired me. So we moved back to Jacksonville, Florida, and now I'm coaching Arena Football.
Tell them when you went to Florida and where I was at.
Yeah, well, so I take the job. In January, right? And so I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. She's stuck in Tiffin, Ohio, in the middle of nowhere of Ohio, and now she's pregnant with our 4th child, Brock. And she had told me, she's like, hey, I want another baby, and I'm like, and I looked at her, and we're going through a bad season at Tiffin, and I'm like, are you serious? I said, you realize we're about to fires right now. You want another baby? And she's like, yeah, God will take care of us. And I'm like, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. All right, we can try. And of course.
So Brian, I got to stop you there for a second. So Mary Beth, Brian, I guess he flies or drives away to Florida. Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, and what are your conversations with Papa like at that moment?
Well, this is just another season, right? And I thank goodness for that life-changing relationship in Florida, that no matter what the circumstance has been in our lives, even at this circumstance, we had 3 small children. I was a teacher. Remember, God created me to be a teacher for this purpose, for the purpose of I have a steady income, I have a steady job, and I can be a teacher anywhere I'm at. So I had a great job. We were in a great school, great community with these 3 small children, and I was pretty big, fat, and pregnant at that time. In fact, Brock was born at the end of May. So Brian leaves in January, and we are invested in our church. We went to a wonderful church, Church of Christ. It was a Church of Christ at the time. We were involved in that church. Kids are involved. We're involved in youth group. And, I had that community around me, but I also continued prayer, continued in prayer. I knew that God was going to provide for us. And every time, every season in our lives that this happens, it's always, there's a sense of peace. I don't get worried. I hate to play the what if game. We play the what if game in the beginning of a relationship. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this? The what if game doesn't work. So you have to release that, and you have to just give over to God that He will take care of you. And he will give you that sense of peace. I knew that we would be fine. I knew that I would be able to get a job once I got back to Florida. But at that time, having him gone, I was shoveling snow, when I was big, fat, and pregnant with our big, long driveway as we were living out in cozy Florida, raising these kids. We had, our second oldest, Bryce, love his heart, but he has some energy for sure. He was the kid that you could send upstairs to do something, but if you told him 3 things to do, he might come down naked. It just he was that boy. He was that boy that I'm going to get a phone call from the principal that he's making fun of the principal in school. A lot of energy. So we didn't have super easy children, that would sit there and cross their hands and sit at the dinner table the correct way. They were challenging and exciting all at the same time, but I knew in my heart of hearts that God was there protecting us and providing for us every step of the way.
Awesome. Yeah. So we ended up, she stayed up in Ohio until school ended, right? So that the kids could end. And so it was during my bye week. I was, so I'm coaching arena football, and this was back when we were playing on ESPN, NFL Network. Players were making really good money. The arena game was it was so much fun to be a part of. Now you're dealing with a lot of delinquents, but it helped me with my coaching style. And so it was my bye week. It was our bye week. And so bye week, I fly up to Ohio. The church packed up the U-Haul for us. So by the time I got to Ohio, the U-Haul was packed up. So I jump in the U-Haul, or I had a friend jump in the U-Haul. He drove the U-Haul back to Florida. We had just found a place to live. I'm driving her in her van from Ohio back to Jacksonville, Florida. She's due. Like we're just
1 week.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
My due date.
Yeah.
Fourth baby. Fourth baby can come anytime.
We were just hoping the baby wasn't going to be born in West Virginia.
We said that.
So we made it to back to Jacksonville, and bye week is over, and she ends up having the baby. She had her 4th child, Brock, in Orange Park, Florida was where we lived. So she had Brock. She gave birth to Brock. The next day, I had to leave because we were playing the New Orleans Voodoo the next day, and so I had to jump. She gave birth. I jump on the bus the next day. I bring Blaine and Bryce with me to New Orleans, so that put them on the bus with me. They're little, right? I'm like, hey guys, we're going to Bourbon Street, right? Put them on the bus with me, and she's got to get a taxi to get home from the hospital.
No, my friend ended up giving me a ride, thank goodness. But yeah.
Mary Beth, my wife's the same thing. We have our 3rd child in Orlando, and the next day I leave for an interview at Pittsburgh. So you guys are tough cookies as wives. Wow.
And the crazy story is, when I remember bringing Brock to an arena football game, which if you've ever been a part of an arena football game, it's not like a golf match, right? People are not just silent. It's wild and it's crazy and it is loud. And we had our 1-week-old baby with our 3 other little ones at this game, which I think Blaine at the time was probably 4th or 5th grade. So we had like a 5th grader, a 3rd grader, kindergartner, and then we had Brock. And 1 week old, he is at this game. So Brock has been around football since, the beginning of time. He has been there through it all. But it was a wild ride for sure.
And it was, arena football was good for us. My first year in arena, we won the championship. We beat Arizona, and then and so it sucked me in. I spent 5 years in arena football, and I did everything from run the offense, run the defense, O-line, D-line coach. I was director of player personnel. My last year, I was the interim head coach because Les Moss, bless his soul, ended up burning the bottoms of his feet off. And so I'm the interim head coach. We ended up losing to San Jose in the Arena Bowl championship then. And it was time for me to leave arena football. The writing was on the wall. It was, it was time to go. I could tell the league was folding. We were losing teams year by year. The pay was not the same as what it used to be. The television exposure was not the same as what it used to be. And so it was time for me to get out. And while I was with arena football, I was also double dipping. I was coaching quarterbacks at Jacksonville University my last 2 years. And so I was with Kerwin Bell coaching quarterbacks. And so I was coaching a lot of football. It was 12 months of straight games. It was talk about killing yourself. I did that for 2 years. the last 2 years, and then we left and we moved to Tennessee, and I left Mary Beth this time in Jacksonville and got in a car and I moved up to Greenville, Tennessee, in East Tennessee, and took the job as offensive coordinator at Tusculum University, where we stayed there for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget, we now have baby number 5. I now have 5 children. We had our 5th Bristol at the time, so I had 5. Same thing. I was a teacher teaching in the area. Every single one of our kids are involved. They're involved in school. They're involved in athletics. They're involved in that area. And then it's like, okay, time for us to
pick up a move.
So, and I think if I remember correctly, Brian, don't you all start a nonprofit ministry at this point as well? Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah. So, God had really laid on my heart my last year in arena football that I wanted to start up a sports ministry. And, but I didn't know what it looked like. And so I was we were going to Orange Park Baptist Church. Mm-hmm. And I went up to the pastor
at the time.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Pastor Tarkenton. And we would sit down and we would just brainstorm of what this wanted to look like. And what I knew is I didn't want a watered down version of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want a watered down version of athletics. Mm-hmm. Like I wanted to be greatness. And so we were getting ready to start this sports ministry, and it was going to be football camps. It was a bunch of different. We had a bunch of different ideas, and right when we were getting about ready to launch it, we got moved to Tennessee. Kerwin Bell lost his job at Jacksonville University. Arena football was looking like it was getting ready to fold. There was no job. There was going to be no job anymore, in Jacksonville. And Jerry Odom was our defensive coordinator at Jacksonville University, and he took the head coaching job at Tusculum, and he asked me if I wanted to come with him. And so we were good. We thought we were planted. Everything was great. Arena football. I'm on TV. I'm getting interviewed by ESPN. The kids are in their sports, their school. She's got a great job at the high school she's teaching at. She was on a track to become a principal in the area. They want her to be a principal. And so, things were great. And then God said, no, you guys are moving again. So we left and went up to Tennessee, and I took the job at Tusculum. And then that's when the sports ministry really blew up, and really credit to Mary Beth of just following what we did is we set a vision as a family. We sat down as a family and we wrote our family mission, and we wanted to use football, or we wanted to use athletics to transform lives. And then once we got up to Tennessee is when the ministry really blossomed. And I spent 4 years coaching at Tusculum University. I had a great time coaching at Tusculum University, and then she ran the ministry.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to do this podcast with my son, Austin. For the last 10 years, Austin and I have had many intimate conversations on his drive home from work. Some of these father-son conversations have been lighthearted, while others have been very deep and emotional. Over the Christmas holidays, we decided to start a podcast called Awaken Kingdom Culture, where we invite our friends to share their life-changing stories with you, our listeners. This podcast is done under our nonprofit, The Win Awakening, a sports ministry network for coaches, athletes, and those who lead. Our vision is to awaken hearts and minds, one story at a time. Our mission is to encourage coaches and athletes and those who lead to live from a place of victory, regardless of success, records, or the scoreboard. Our goal is to create safe environments where transparency and vulnerability are accepted, and value and worth are recognized in an atmosphere of love. Right in the middle of your mess, I'm reminded daily that the most important person of my day is the one in front of me, and that one matters, and that you are the one. WinAwakening.org is our website. I encourage you to visit our website where you can encounter the good news of who you are in Christ and what you already possess and how to live from it. There you'll find blogs, videos, Andrew's journal, and this podcast, Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. I'm thankful for all of you who have given and are a member of Team Win. Awaken Kingdom Culture is listener supported. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to winawakening.org. We are a nonprofit. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And please like, share, and write a review on Spotify or YouTube. Okay, it's time to get back to the podcast.
So at the time, we're now living in Greenville, Tennessee. I am teaching special education at Greenville High School. Our oldest is playing football at Greenville High School. Our second oldest is at the middle school. And then everybody else is in elementary school or preschool at the time. And so, we talked about that sports ministry in Florida, and we were really trying to get it started with the church that we were at the time. And when we rolled into Tennessee, God did not remove that urgency from our hearts. I mean, it was something that he planted in our hearts. This is something you need to do. And he wasn't going to leave it alone. If you have ever had that tugging of like God, the Spirit, like really tugging at you. So one of the coach's girlfriends, fiancés at the time, her name was Joanne Klein, and she was a former track athlete, track star, cross-country runner at Jacksonville University. Super amazing athlete, very talented. And her and I connected. We connected, and she was very strong in her faith. I started to kind of talk to her about, hey, God's laying on our heart that we need to do this sports ministry. And I'm kind of wanting to do a running ministry. And so we started to talk, and we kind of put together a plan to start an organization. Brian and I called it Building Powerful Athletes. And one facet of that ministry was Powerful Runners. Powerful Runners was what we wanted to start in Tennessee. So Joanne coming alongside of me as kind of the coach that knew the world of running because of her expertise. We decided, let's give this a shot. So we started to advertise this running ministry. And at the time, Bryn was in elementary school. She was in 4th grade. And we launched it. We launched it at this little church right across from Tusculum University, this little Baptist church. And, it was cold. So it was in the spring, when we started this ministry, and we advertised it. Day one of our first meeting date, my daughter was there and one other girl. Her name was Hannah, and she was a homeschooler. So she had learned about this. I'm not sure exactly where she learned about. So we had 2 girls in this ministry. So we had cleared out all the chairs in the gym. And basically the purpose of the running ministry was we're going to train these girls. And at the time it was open to girls. We were going to train these girls. We were going to make them love running. We were going to pour the Holy Spirit and the Bible and devotionals. We were going to pour that into them. And then we were going to serve the community. That was how this ministry, we envisioned this ministry. So after the first meeting date, Hannah shows up in jeans, her hair's down. And I looked at her, and at the time, I think she was a 5th grader. She was a year older than Bryn was. At the time, I looked at her and I said, you realize this is a running ministry. Like, you're going to be running. You understand that, right? She's like, yeah, I'm good. So I don't know, some silly, we're running in the gym, in this little gym, and we have 2 girls, and we did a devotional and we prayed. And Joanne and I, after that meeting date, we were a little discouraged. It was like, God, you've placed this thing on our heart, this ministry.
And it was my daughter, which I love her, right? But she came with me. I mean, it's not like somebody from the outside. She drove in my car with me. It was her and then Hannah. And so we prayed. God does crazy things when you pray. So we prayed, and all we prayed for was, God, can you please double the number next time? God, can you please double the number? So I am not kidding. The next time we met 2 days a week. The next time we met, we had 4 runners. The week after that, God gave us some more girls. The week after that, God brought and provided more girls. And so it spread. And we realized that this teeny tiny little church running in this it was not going to cut it. So we ended up expanding. We met at a local park, and we would pray. I came up with kind of a curriculum. It was whatever God had placed on my heart at the time. I did a lot of research, and we did, whether we were talking about faith or whether we were talking about the different names of Christ that season, whatever message God put in my heart to share with these girls, we were doing that, and we were doing that twice a week. And not only that, but our ministry, it blossomed, and it was seasonal. We did it in the spring. We took a little break in the summer. We would do the same thing in the fall and then in the spring. And it brought together public school kids. It brought together private school kids. It brought homeschoolers out. We had girls from all different facets coming out, and we would race in local 5Ks. And we would have people ask, who's this group? We would have shirts that would say Powerful Runners, and they would ask us questions. And we gained more and more and more girls. So every year we had more, and we would always serve the community. Every single season we did something. One year we raised enough money to purchase shoes for an orphanage in Haiti that our Baptist church back in Florida was partnered with. It's an orphanage there. So we provided 50 pairs of shoes, and we sent it to this orphanage. One year, it was actually our last year there, we had at that point in time expanded it to boys, because we saw a need not just for girls in the community. And these were 3rd grade up through high school. But we saw a need for the boys, and we had like siblings of the kids that we had served. They wanted to be a part of this ministry. And so the last season that we were there, we put together a 5K, a local 5K in the area at the church that we were at. They helped us to kind of be the host of that 5K. And we mapped out a route. Like we worked with a guy that actually would map out a real 5K route for us. And we raised, it was probably about $20,000. And we gave it to a local organization in town whose Isaiah House. Yeah, thank you. He knows my memory sometimes isn't the greatest. But Isaiah House they are a local ministry. They provide kind of a holding ground for kids that are in the foster care system that go from their home, and they're taken out of their home, and they're housed in this Isaiah House. So it's a beautiful home that was built in Greenville, Tennessee, where these kids can get the items that they need, clothing, food that they need to transition them into a foster home. So we partnered with Isaiah House. We raised enough money to build and put a playground in the back of their home. And so every season we would do something. We were serving, providing, doing something with that ministry, and it blossomed. It was a blessing. It was something that drew us closer together as a family, as a couple. God, he used that season of our life to really, really build our faith in Him, and our relationship and our marriage was stronger than ever during that season in our life.
Yeah. And what's crazy is, we spent the 4 years, and, we're in Greenville, Tennessee, coaching at Tusculum University, and, we're running the ministry, and it's getting big. And, it's the girls are going to these local races, and they're destroying the competition. And then, so then people wanted to be a part of winners. Right. And so it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it was time to leave Tusculum. And we did all these great things, or, it
was both of us. It was both of us.
And then it was time to leave. So
we transition from Tusculum to Concord. You're there 3 years as an OC. And I want to start our conversation with you and I in the summer of 23, and you want to be a head coach. Talk to us about your conversations you're having, one with yourself, Mary Beth, and the ones we had.
Yeah. We left Tusculum and went up to Concord, and I was offensive coordinator. 2020 was the first season. It was a COVID season. 21, 22. 22 was a great year for us. We went 9-2. We had a lot of offensive accolades to say. And then, but I always had the passion in my heart to be a head football coach, and it started back. Really our first time in Jacksonville back in 2005, with the Jaguars. And, I had applied and interviewed for a lot of head coaching jobs at the high school level. And, I was going to be content to just be a high school head football coach and, be a transformational leader with these high school kids. And I never got the job. I never could get the job. And we didn't understand why. It was like all of my NFL experience and college experience, and I just never got the job. And so I was always searching for that head coaching job. And then 2023, the head coach that I had worked for at Concord, he decided that college football wasn't for him. And so he left in June of 23. And it was about the time when we got reacquainted, with each other. You started up the ministry around that time, and I believe I got a inbox on Facebook or Twitter from you saying, here's this ministry, check it out. And so I checked it out, and I was like, Ken Karch has been big in my life, and he doesn't even know how big he's been in my life, prior. And he's a Ryan Fire guy. So, all us Ryan Fire guys, we stay, together. Ryan Fire is a special group of people. Yes. And so I was like, I want to see what Ken's got going. And, in 22, we had the, winning season as an offensive coordinator, but I wasn't happy. It was a tough season. And so me and Ken, we started talking. This win awakening. What is this win awakening about? And we started talking, and and then June of 23, got promoted to head football coach, and got everything that I ever wanted and more.
And more.
What do you think of Mary Beth?
At the time, you guys know how the world of coaching works. When the head coach goes, you don't know what's going to happen to everybody that works for that head coach. So honestly, at the time, we are praying and praying and praying and praying and really calling out to God. But we didn't know. There was so much uncertainty, so many things unknown, and we understand how this business works. We know how it's, you either stick around or they send you get to find something else. I always tell people that don't understand this business, especially as a coach's wife, is we are a lot like a military wife, right? We know we're going to move. The only huge difference is there's no guarantee of a job. Because you're moving doesn't mean your husband has a nice job that they're moving to. You don't know that. So there's always so much uncertainty and unknowing, but we prayed diligently, and God answered that prayer, in ways that we had no idea that he was gonna lead and guide Brian into this new role as head coach.
So, Coach, tell us a little bit about, your vision, your mission, your goals, and describe kind of your coaching and leadership philosophy.
Yeah. Vision, mission, and goals. Our vision for me as a football coach, with our football team that I had at Concord, was fast, physical, discipline with character, and then we're going to teach them elite technique. But really what the vision of the program is, it's been the vision of my coaching philosophy since I got into coaching. And I want to use football as a method or as a tool to help develop guys physically, socially, morally, athletically, academically, so that when they leave Concord University, if they leave whatever university, that they'll be able to take their gifts and their talents and they'll be able to impact lives. And those lives could be their future wife. It could be their future kids. It could be whatever the career path that they choose, right? And so that's the philosophy. And really, for me, my coaching philosophy is very simple. I want to be a transactional football coach. I've had a lot of, or I'm sorry, not transactional, transformational football coach. I've had a lot of transactional coaches in my life, and I never wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be somebody that could influence guys, right? And when I got into coaching, and really with the Ryan Fire, I'm coaching guys my same age, and so I wasn't going to be able to coach guys the way that I got coached. They weren't going to listen to me. I'm 27 years old. They're pro football players. I had to find a way to relate to those guys, and it was about making them a better person, making them a better football player. And so my philosophy as a coach became player first. I was about the player. It was all about the player first. I'm about team second. And then my needs were met as a football coach based off of the needs I met for my players. And so that's my whole philosophy in coaching, and that's my vision in coaching, is I want to help the players reach whatever goals they've set in their lives. If it's to be an NFL player, if it's to be a Pro Bowler, if it's to make it to that second contract, if it's to get whatever it may be, I want to use my coaching platform to just transform the lives of whoever I'm coaching. And it's player first, team second. My needs is met by meeting the needs of others.
Mary Beth, how did you, in the last 2 years, how did you see Brian grow as a head coach?
How did I see him grow as a head coach? Well, I will tell you that he taught me a lot about the world of coaching. I've learned so much watching him develop relationships with players. He, as a head coach, your job, your only job is not to run the plays, right? Or to be in charge of the playbook. Your job is to be a father to these kids, to be a therapist to these kids. He had a lot of meetings with players, as therapist. He wore so many different hats. And I'll tell you, this last season of our life, even though as stressful as it was, watching him work endless hours, behind the scenes, all of the things that you have to do as a head coach. And it's a small D2 program. So I'm helping do some things behind the scenes, right? People don't realize if you're a part of a small D2 program, you've got to utilize your resources. And then we had our daughter was taking pictures on the sideline, and our youngest daughter was the water girl, and our 2 boys were playing football. So we, as a whole family, watching those gains in our lives, it was so much fun, just knowing that this is a family affair, and he's creating a family environment for these kids, for these players that, they're D2. He brought in so many players in the summer that had no home, and he provided a home for these kids. And then I've been coaching for the last 5 years, cross country and track, because of the ministry in Tennessee. Because of that ministry, I learned how to be a coach. Because of my husband, I learned how to be a coach. And I ended up coaching track. We coached track for a few seasons together. I was a soccer gymnast, right? And I learned the world of running from Joanne in that time of ministry in Tennessee. And then when we moved to this area, I took on the role of cross country coach and track coach. And I had 80 kids on my cross country team. 80 kids. And I'm thinking, God, how am I supposed to coach all of these kids? But watching my husband, learning from him, learning what it's like to be organized and managed and everything. And then track, we had 150 on the track team. And then he's coming alongside of me and guiding and directing me. And I'm learning how to be a coach. I'm learning about technique. I'm learning how to manage them. So we've seen so many gains in this last season of our life. And I've watched him blossom, as a coach because of it. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience the last several years.
Mm.
Yeah, and then where we go from here is, you know.
Let me ask you this, Brian, real quick though. How does Mary Beth make you better?
How does she make me better?
Don't look at me. He asked you that question, not me.
I mean, we've just have always been one since we've been together, you know, and you know, we started working in the pool together, and it was just, I knew when I first saw her, I was like, I'm gonna go marry that. I'm gonna marry her, and you know, it took a little while to convince her, you know, and then it's just, we've just always been one. And so how does she make me better? Is she lets me be me. She allows me to be me. She allows me to be crazy. She allows me to get angry. She allows me to just be me. And you know, and so and then she's our strength. And so when things go bad, you know, in this coaching world or health or whatever, I just know that she's going to be strong, and I'm going to be able to, you know, lean on her as much as she can lean on me. And the two of us, I mean, we got over her mom's death. We found her mom dead. You know, we got over moves, job losses. Like, this is easy.
Well, it's a beautiful picture of your relationship, and I always like to have each person talk about each other, because sometimes I know this in our marriages, we tend to get busy and we forget to do that sometimes. But I want to jump to, before we go to legacy and wrap up, I want to jump to the current state of affairs. And this past Monday was November 18th, which is not a good day in my life either, because November 18th, 2005 is when I was fired by Liberty University and had 4 children and a wife. And, you know, we hear in this profession, I think sometimes we hear these statements and we just take it for granted and we don't think much about it. Things like, you know, we're going to make a change, or we're going to go in a different direction, or we're relieving you of your duties, or you didn't meet the standard, or all these different statements that sometimes come out. But what we forget behind those statements are families, and it's real life, and there's emotions involved, and hurts and joys and fears, and all those different things occur. And so without going into all kind of detail, I just wanted to have you share with our listeners, because in the next 3 months, there's going to probably be 50 people that are going to be relieved, and I'm saying it in a nice way, relieved of their duties, that they're going to have put in time and effort into people's lives at a place, and it's going to feel like that person or people that tell you are going to be saying, we don't need you anymore. So unfortunately, as you and I've walked together, you got that news on Monday. How are you two doing, and how are you handling it? And how would you recommend to others as you walk through this 1 week ago?
Oh, those are some hard questions, right? Hard questions to answer. You're living right in the midst of it all, right?
Yeah.
You know, in June of 23, when I took over as the head coach, there was 32 players on this roster. And so I had to put a roster together in June and July. That's not a time to put a college roster together in the summertime. And so the 23 season, we really struggled. We won 1 game. We had guys that weren't ready to play college football playing college football. And then we fast forward to this season, and you know, we thought it was going to be a better season. And, you know, record wise, you know, we thought it was going to be a better season. And, you know, so I had 1 recruiting class, and it was 1 recruiting class leading up into the season. And you know, we saw so many gains on the football field with our football players. We saw so many gains in these guys' lives. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't showing up on the scoreboard. And so, you know, we only won 1 game. And, you know, I had 1 recruiting class. didn't even have a chance to really build the program. And so they called me in on Monday. I never had a chance to meet with the athletic directors. They didn't talk to me. I met with HR, and they just said we decided to go in a different direction. I asked why. They told me that they didn't give me a reason why. And so, Monday was the end of Concord University. And so the advice to give to everybody else is, I don't know. I woke up Tuesday morning confused, angry, sad, hurt.
I think, this is a hardcore world, this world of coaching. And Ken, I've listened to you in Austin. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I told you guys in the beginning that I often will run and I'll hit the latest. I'll hit play on my Spotify and I will listen to you guys. I'll listen to these stories of these coaches out there. And everybody goes through it. Unfortunately, it's a hard business. I don't think we were surprised by the news because of the scoreboard. It's not about relationships. It wasn't about relationships. It wasn't about the transforming of lives. It wasn't about all of the games that happened throughout the season. It was strictly about the scoreboard. And it's sad that we live in a business, and it's a business. Unfortunately, the world of football, right? In any coaching profession, if you're at the college and professional level, it's a business, right? And business transactions happen. And so the numbers weren't adding up on the scoreboard, and they let him go. But I don't think people realize how much impact saying those words that we're going in a different direction have, because it's not only impacted us, but now, we have a family and we have children, and now we're trying to figure out, okay, God, you got this. Where are we going now? What do you have in store for us now? And when I found out the news from him, I was truly at peace, because I know how God works and I know how he operates. And back in the day when I'm working at Park, I didn't know I was going to be a special ed teacher, or that I was going to be coaching track and cross country. I had no way would I have told you I was going to do that. But God puts all these pieces together, and he builds and guides and directs us in the direction that he wants us to go. But what we have to do right now as a couple is not get angry, not get upset about the situation, because that doesn't help anything. What we need to do is we need to let it all go and just listen to God's calling. Like, where do you want us to go next, God? Because he'll answer that. He's going to guide and direct us, but we have to be willing to listen and not put our ideas in the forefront. We have to think about what God has in store for us and what's best for our family, and how are we going to make an impact on the next community? Because I know we will, because it happens every place we go, because God has provided us that opportunity.
Yeah. And, I woke up Tuesday morning, and, the one thing that I but one thing I instilled into my players was there was two things that we wanted to focus on these last 2 years with my players. And the first thing was our mindset. We wanted to be able to control our mindset. And the second was playing fast and physical, right? And the fast and physical part, that's easy. We do that as football players. The mindset part was hard. And so I had a chance to do everything that I taught my players throughout these last 2 years on Tuesday morning, was to control my mindset, right? And so I just sat down and kind of listed out the gains of the season, kind of my farewell to the players, and list out all the gains that we saw that we didn't see on, the scoreboard. Didn't see everything. The scoreboard is what everyone else sees, but what they didn't see was the unseen victories. And so I just wrote out those gains to those players, and because it not only does it affect me and my family, but I had 142 players on my football team. I recruited 140 football players. I recruited those guys. And so all those guys are hurting too, because they want to know what's next for them. Where are they going to play football at next? Are they going to stay at Concord? Are they going to transfer? And so it's just not just my life. It's my players' lives also. And so what advice can I give to everybody that's about to, get fired? Just take it one day at a time. Try to win one day at a time.
Mm. Wow.
Well, we thank you for being so open and honest to share that. And I sent this to our coaches this week, and this is from my own experience. When we are hurting, we don't need a Bible verse. We don't need someone to tell us what to do. What we need is presence. We need each other to know that we're there for you. We also need to say a little and listen a lot. People don't need our suggestions of how we can fix it, not in this time of hurt. And we need to love each other right in the middle of the mess, because some days are going to be messy as we walk through this process. But I love what you said, Mary Beth, that there's no doubt. Papa's about restoration. He's not about brokenness. We live in a broken and fallen world that there are things that come into our lives that cause pain. But pain and resurrection work hand in hand. Mm. And so, as you said, there's already something down the road for you and Brian and those 5 beautiful children that he's prepared and preparing. Yes.
What? Too now.
And grandbaby. That's right. That's right. So, the restoration is coming as we continue to grow in our relationship with him. And that's the beauty of painful situations like this. So again, thanks for your transparency. Now, as we wrap it up with legacy, from your perspective, both of you, how can couples best support each other in times like this in this profession?
I think it's really easy to say no and give up. That's the easy route to take. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not going to stand by your side. No, I don't want to move. Let's just end this. That's an easy route to take. But when you decide to spend your life with somebody, you make that commitment to that person. Mm-hmm. You have to stand by their side, and that's what we've done. We have stood by each other's side every step of the way, knowing that the unexpected is soon to happen. We don't know what's next. It's unexpected. It's waters that we've never, been a part of, but staying firm in our relationship, in our marriage, staying strong in that, staying strong in our faith, being involved in a church, praying, reading the Bible. I mean, there are so many things that there are musts to keep your relationship strong. And I feel like that's been kind of our guiding factor for our relationship over the last, we've been married 23 together, 7, so 30 years total for us.
Yeah. I think on as far as on the coaches side of things, obviously as coaches, we need to make sure that we're putting our wives first. Right. And, as a coach, you work all these crazy hours and you're leaving and you're traveling and you're doing all that kind of stuff. But making sure that you put your wife's needs first and you put your coach and your kids' needs first. And so I always try to do that and continue to try to, put her needs first, knowing that if I meet her needs, that she'll be able to pick up and leave whenever is asked for us. And, and so, for us, it's just, we've had a great relationship. I couldn't ask for, I found my, my partner, and, I'm lucky for that because, God put the right person in my life because he knew the craziness that we were going to go through.
Amen.
Thank you.
What has been the most significant moment in your coaching and spiritual journey?
Oh, most significant moment in my coaching journey. That's tough because I've been a part of a lot of football games. I've been a part of, winning seasons. I've been a part of losing seasons. For me, the significance of my coaching journey is when I've worked with a kid on a technique or working on a quarterback, I'm working through a certain type of progression with a drop, and he gets it. And he's able to work that drop with that progression. He's able to cancel his first read, work to his second read, cancel his second read, throw a completion on his third read type of thing. Is working with those kids and seeing them reach the goals that they achieve, or that they've set out to achieve. The rings don't matter to me. The wins don't matter to me. It's watching those guys get better and reach their dreams that they're trying to accomplish. As far as my spiritual is just one day at a time, just trying to have a relationship with God one day at a time, feel his presence, have a relationship, like I said, one day at a time, and I'm learning. And as I get older and more mature in my faith, and it's not a transactional religion to me anymore. It's about a relationship with God,
Yeah.
Mm.
Amen.
What about you?
What about you, Mary Beth?
I would say for me, it truly started in Tennessee with the ministry. Just watching how important it is to be bold in your faith, just share the gospel with those around you, and to serve. That to me has been the most significant part of my spiritual journey and coaching journey, as well as is that ministry that God laid on our hearts. And that ministry is still going today, even though we're in Virginia 4 years later, it's still going today. Wow. It's still, it's been amazing to watch that. And what's really important to us, with our kids and now with our grandchild, is that they have been brought up in a home with a loving set of parents, that we go to church and we pray and we are bold in sharing our faith, because we didn't have that when we were growing up. So we are hoping that'll continue with their children and children to come, and just kind of providing that for our own family so that they can be transformational with the people they come in contact with.
Awesome.
When someone spends time with the Fergusons as a team there, couple, Brian and Mary Beth, what do you want them to experience from you guys? And how do you two want to be remembered as a couple?
I would say they're guaranteed, if they spend any time with the Ferguson household, that they're going to see a little chaos, a little craziness. But I hope that they see love. I hope that they see love. They see that we love each other and that we have strong faith in all situations, in all circumstances. And our home is open to anybody that needs it.
Awesome.
Final words, Brian, Mary Beth, what would you like to say? Anything we didn't ask you, something on your heart? Final words to each other first, and then listeners.
Final words is just, to my wife is obviously thank you for being a part of this crazy journey. And the craziness isn't over. We're going to live the crazy one day at a time, the beautiful mess of coaching one day at a time. And I just thank you for her being faithful and a loving wife through this craziness. To the listeners is, hopefully somebody has walked in our shoes and or is about to walk. Yeah,
wild ride.
If we can help anybody out, it's then hopefully we can help anybody out. But just to live one day at a time, try to win one day at a time, to celebrate your gains one day at a time, to not live in the gap, but live in the gain.
Final words for me: one step at a time. One day at a time. Don't play the what if game. I've loved every step of the way that we've taken in this crazy journey of our lives, and I wouldn't have wanted to do it with anybody else. If I had to go back in time to erase anything, I wouldn't. There's no way. The ups and downs, the valleys, the roller coaster rides that we've been on have brought us closer together as a couple, and it's been a blessing. It's a wild ride, but it's been a blessing.
For me, just sitting and listening, first off, thank y'all for coming on and sharing. Having watched my dad walk through it and me going through some, not quite to the extent, but to some extent, some of the challenges that y'all are walking through now. I can't imagine going through a week like you just went through and being willing to be open and share. I listened to your story, and the word battle tested popped into my mind. Your relationship has walked through a lot of challenges, and your faith is strong. I mean, it's very, very strong, and you can see it through, what you all have worked together. As I tried to, as I've been praying for y'all this week, and just thinking about this podcast, and what would I say at the end? Here's kind of the things that Pop and I talked about. First thing he wanted to remind me, because what it brought back to me is when I was, I guess, 17 years old, and my dad just got fired, and I'm going to school, which is connected to the university that my dad was just fired from, and I go to church where my pastor is the guy who fired my dad, and I can remember going and taking my anger and my my rage and all that stuff out in a painting. And here's some of the things he reminded me of, those feelings that I felt. And he wanted me to remind you that, first off, God saw it all. He saw all of it. And he knows it all, because I know, you're sitting there and you're saying, this circumstance happened, and this happened, and these kids, and this, he sees it all. And I can remember when I would try to share my testimony, it's like I wanted people to feel what I felt. I want them to feel what I felt, but I could never quite put it into words, But that's what God reminded me is there's one person who does see it all. He's been in it all. And he knows it all. And so I wanted to remind you that God has done that with you. And he feels everything you're feeling right now. And he's ready to walk through the next little chapter coming forward. And I know there's some uncertainties and unknowns, but like my dad and I have been kind of walking through and discussing is, although we walk into the unknowns, what we can hang on to is what we do know, and that is him. And he's enough, and he will provide in whatever way he ends up providing. And then his goodness, his mercy is chasing after you, even in the middle of this. So those were some of the thoughts. And then there was just a little thing I wrote. And once again, like my dad said, the best thing in these times or these seasons is presence. Words don't necessarily mean anything. And sometimes truth even hurts. But, I wrote this, and you take it as you take it. I'm just trusting that the Spirit will use it how he uses it. I know this will not make either of y'all feel any better right now, but I share this in faith. I trust that in time, the Father will encourage y'all with this eternal truth. What y'all are walking through right now is the greatest act of love a coach, a teacher, or a spouse can demonstrate for people around them. Because for the first time, you get nothing in return. Your love is being lived out in the purest form because y'all gave completely, yet bore the burden of performance for those around you. Is this not the example of the life of Christ? It says in John 15:3, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for a friend. That's transformational coaching, and I know you have walked that out, and you're pouring out. And there's going to be another part of your journey that's going to be fun and exciting and full of joy. But right now it hurts, and I just want to remind you, you're not alone in this. We love you. We got people praying for you, and we're just thankful for you.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you, guys.
Love y'all.
Wow. It's amazing my son can get to me 18 years after my event. Thanks, Austin, for sharing that from your heart. Well, but Brian, I've walked with for 2 years every Friday, basically. I think we maybe have not done it 2 or 3 times. And Mary Beth, I've heard your name over and over and over. And obviously I can relate in some ways because I know my wife went through, but he didn't sell you to the degree he could have sold you. You are a special
Thank you.
woman. And I know you carry the name or brand of coach and head coach's wife and mother and grandmother now and all those different titles. But let me remind you, I saw a child of the King today. And the relationship that the two of you have is going to be a blessing to those that will listen. Your transparency and vulnerability was beautiful. And we're excited for the next piece of your journey that Papa has for you. So Austin and I, from the deepest part of our heart, really, we do thank you for taking your time today to share your story with our listeners at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.